Hi everybody, I'm back for part 2 of today's YouTube video. In this portion of the video, I will be giving progress on library books that I just started today. The first book that I wanted to talk about is called Enlightenment by Sarah Perry. My mother-in-law Sally recommended this book to me, and I will read you what it is about. A dazzling new work of literary fiction from the author of The Essex Serpent, a story of love and astronomy told over the course of 20 years through the lives of two improbable best friends. Thomas Hart and Grace Mulcahy have lived their lives in a small Essex town of Adelaide. Though separated in age by 3 decades, the pair are kindred spirits, torn between their commitment to religion and their desire to explore the world beyond their small Baptist community. It is two romantic relationships that will rend their friendship. And in the wake of this rupture, Thomas develops an obsession with a vanished 19th century astronomer said to haunt a nearby manor, and Grace flees Adelaide entirely for London. Over the course of 20 years, by coincidence and design, Thomas and Grace will find their lives brought back into orbit as the mystery of the vanished astronomer unfolds into a devastating tale of love and scientific pursuit. Thomas and Grace will ask themselves what it means to love and be loved, and what is fixed and what is mutable, how much of our fate is predestined and written in the stars, and whether they find their way back to each other. A thrillingly ambitious novel of friendship, faith, and unrequited love, rich in symmetry and symbolism. Enlightenment is a shimmering wonder of a book. It's Sarah Perry's finest work to date. This is a new author to me this year. Currently, I am on page 76. The next book that I'm reading is called Once Upon You and Me, a Harlequin novel by Timothy Janofsky. It is a male-male romance, and I will tell you what it's about. When Taylor Frost boss Amy flies him across the country to prep for her daughter's Sweet 16 at the Storybrooke Endings Resort in the Catskills, the solo mission is well within his wheelhouse. Taylor is excellent at his job, except he's probably not supposed to flirt with the reserved mountain man of a manager, Ethan Golding. But because the wicked older man is also the birthday girl's father, aka Amy's ex-husband. For Ethan, his divorce seemed like the bad ending to his romantic story, and now making his daughter's Sweet 16 dreams come true is the closest he'll get to any kind of magic, happiness, and fairy tales, until adorable Taylor has him wondering if maybe this is just the beginning of a more erotic kind of bedtime story. The only problem is Amy, and how very not okay she'd be with the chemistry between her assistant and her ex. If only forbidden flings ever led to happily ever afters. So far, I am on page 63, and I am really loving the start of the build-up between Ethan and Taylor's relationship. The next book that I picked up from the library yesterday is Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I have now read, I believe, all of Taylor Jenkins Reid's current books and backlist books by reading this book. This book focuses on Elsie, who loses her husband Ben and an ex. So when her husband is hit and injured in an accident, she meets her mother for the first time, the mother-in-law, And the mother-in-law has basically Elsie and Ben rush into their relationship, and Ben has never introduced his parents to his girlfriend until the moment when the mom meets her in the hospital after Ben's accident. And discussion question 5. Do you understand why Ben never told his mother about his relationship with Elsie? Why do you think Elsie didn't push him harder on this? No. It really bothers me that Ben kept his relationship a secret from his mom, because he should have not done that. He should have been more open with his family about his relationship with his girlfriend instead of hiding it. And that's why I do not like this character very much. Ben and Elsie's relationship is twice likened to a supernova. Discuss the two different contexts this comparison appears in. Ultimately, do you think it is applicable analogy for their love? I don't really know if it's applicable or not. I can't really decide. Let's see. If Ben hadn't gone out for Fruity Pebbles that night, if he had lived, what do you think would have been in store for Elsie and Ben's marriage? And do you think Elsie would be as close to Susan? Yeah, I think that if Ben had survived his accident, him and Elsie would have had kids, and then seen his kids grow up and see the kids' relationship with the grandmother. Currently in this book, I am on April. That's the name of the chapter. Instead of numbers, these chapters are like named after the month of the year that the relationship is set in at the current time. And I am on page 204. So I should finish this book tomorrow. It's a really quick read. So I think I will eventually do a tier ranking of all of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books, since, as I have said, I have read her whole backlist and all of her current books, including her recent release, Atmosphere. More recently, I have read Maybe in Another Life, and After I Do. So stay tuned for that video. That will be probably a shorter form video that will be up in the next couple of days. So based on where I am right now in this book, I think it's probably going to be 3.5 to 4 stars. The next book that I am reading right now is called I Hope This Finds You Well by Natalie Sue. This book was recommended to me by Carly at the Pastel Bookshelf, and she mentioned this book in the video where she pairs up books with TV shows, and she paired up this book with The Office, which is appropriate because it's set in an office. This book focuses on our main protagonist, and her name is Jolene, and she accidentally sends a nasty email out to the whole email server at her job. And basically this book is the events of all of that happening and how she manages to fix the relationships with her coworkers after sending the nasty email. Currently, I am on page 127. The next book that I am reading is The Scammer by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is a thriller that is set. This is a YA thriller that is set on a college campus. It focuses on our main protagonist, and her name is Jordan. She's starting school at she's starting her first year of college, and let's just begin. Out from under her overprotective parents, Jordan is ready to kill and pre-law at a prestigious historically black university in Washington, D.C. Kappa parties and student government better watch their backs, and she's not the only one. When her roommate's brother is released from prison, the last thing Jordan expects is to come home and find the ex-convict on a dorm room sofa. But Devontae needs a place to stay while he gets back on his feet. And how could she say no to one of her new best friends? Devontae is older, and as charming as he is, intelligent, pushing every student he meets to make better choices about their young lives. But Jordan senses something sinister beneath his friendly advice and growing group of followers. When one of Jordan's other roommates goes missing, she must enlist the help of the university's lone white student to uncover the mystery or become trapped at the center of a web of lies more tangled than she can imagine. I have really loved the pacing of this book. It's very fast-paced, and it keeps you hooked from page 1. Currently, I am on page 126, chapter 10. The next book that I am reading is a reread. This is Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors. It is on my TBR for the next couple of months that focuses on substance use disorder. So basically, I'm rereading this book. I'm rereading Scenes from My Life by Michael K. Williams. I'm rereading Matthew Perry's memoir. I'm going to be reading Tweak by Nick Schiff, the person that Beautiful Boy is based on. I'm going to read this romance book called When the World Sinks Up later in February. So yeah, that's where that lineup is. Currently in my reread, I am only on chapter 4. I just started this morning, so I'm not very far into it yet. The next book that I am reading is a recommendation from Kayla at Books and Lala. This was on her top books of 2025 video. It is called Jane Austen's Bookshelf by Rebecca Romney. And this is a nonfiction book that is basically about the writers who inspired Jane Austen's books. So this book is super intriguing to me as somebody who has read Emma, Pride and Prejudice, and Sense and Sensibility. So I'm really enjoying this so far. I just started it this morning, and I am only on... I've read the first 116 pages. I'm on chapter 4 at the moment. Another nonfiction book that I'm borrowing from Kathleen is Hidden Figures by Margot Lee Sharley. This is about the black astronauts behind the space program, and it's a reread for me. I read it last year. I gave it 4.5 stars. 2 other books that I'm borrowing from Kathleen are The Hating Game by Sally Thorne and the Gurdy Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, which is a World War II contemporary fiction book about a book club during World War II that was recommended to me by my mother's friend Carol. So I can't wait to get started on that book. I will be borrowing that book from Kathleen next week when we watch People We Meet on Vacation. And then I will be reading Hidden Figures in March and The Hating Game after Valentine's Day. The last book I picked up from the library yesterday that I am currently reading is Mary and Lou and Rhoda and Ted and All the Brilliant Minds Who Made the Mary Tyler Moore Show a Classic by Jennifer Cation Armstrong. This author writes a lot of deep dives into popular movies and TV shows that go through the generations. A book that I read from her last month was So Fetch, which is a book that focuses on the making of the movie Mean Girls. She's also written a book about Sex and the City called Sex and the City and Us, a book about Seinfeld called Seinfeldia, and 2 of her other titles are called Why Because We Still Like You, An Oral History of the Mickey Mouse Club, and Sexy Feminism with Heather Wood Rudolph. So all of the books that I have read by this author have been between 4.5 and 5 stars. So I really love how she goes deep into how these shows are cast, the filming of the episodes, the costumes, everything. That's what I also liked about Lauren Graham's memoir that me and Kathleen will be talking about in our nonfiction wrap-up at the end of April, where we talk about all of the nonfiction that we read throughout December, January, February, March, and April. And Matt and I are reviewing 2 episodes of Mary Tyler Moore in our next entertainment wrap-up video out on February 28th. Those episodes are Toulouse-Lautrec is My Favorite Artist, Season 1, Episode 7, and The Good Time News, Season 3, Episode 1. So the Mary Tyler Moore Show was on in the 1970s, so it was on when my parents were younger. So I would be interested to talk to them about these episodes of Mary Tyler Moore that we're going to watch. Mary Tyler Moore was also one of the shows that was directed by the same guy who directed Friends. So I really love learning about shows that he directed earlier in his career. Mary Tyler Moore came out in the 70s. And then that was followed up by Cheers, which is another show that we've been watching. Obviously, we've been watching Friends, which came out in 1994. We're also watching Will and Grace, which came out in 1998. So we are like going through it with watching these shows that were directed by James Burrows. And so far, I would say that other than Friends, my favorite show that I'm probably watching right now is Will and Grace, because that was one of the other shows that I watched when I was a teenager. I watched Friends, I watched Will and Grace, I watched Sex and the City, I watched Seinfeld with my parents. And like the cool thing about the Seinfeld book is that they mentioned a restaurant where they filmed the scenes of Seinfeld where they were in a diner, and that's actually a real restaurant in New York City called Tom's Diner. And I actually want to go there the next time I go to New York, which won't be for a while because right now I'm in between jobs because I had a job during the fall as a it was kind of like an internship at the Boys and Girls Club, and that ended right before Christmas. I'm still volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club until Vertical Harvest starts, and I think I'm gonna try to find another job in the next couple of months so that way I can make some extra money before Vertical Harvest starts, but I don't know what I'm gonna do about that yet. So in this book, I am on page 73. So I want to know if you have read any of these books, if you grew up in the time period of Mary Tyler Moore. I want to know what your favorite episode of that show is. If you can recommend any other episodes from that show for us to watch, that would be great, because as I was mentioning, so far we're reviewing 2 episodes for the blog from season 1 and season 3, but we're willing to watch more episodes if you can recommend us any. Thank you. Have a great night and a great weekend, and stay safe in a snowstorm.